Our final speaker for the final session of PETS 2024 is going to be Yasha Irabanchi, who is a PhD student at the University of Michigan, and he's going to be talking about PrivacyLens, which is an on-device PII removal from RGB Images using thermally enhanced sensing.
Is it good? There we go. Hi everyone, so yeah, last talk, last day. I'm Yasha, I'm from the University of Michigan, and today I'll be presenting PrivacyLens. Cameras are one of the most expressive and information-rich sensors, and they've been incredibly effective at performing important tasks in the home, such as health monitoring, activity recognition, and fall detection. And commercial cameras, commercial products exist that have cameras to do things like elder care monitoring, baby monitoring, and pet monitoring. However, there are privacy issues that exist with cameras, and first many users have this mental model that the data that's coming off the camera is for their own personal use. And there have been numerous incidents that have revealed that this in fact is not the case. And the way that these systems are designed, it often makes it really challenging to determine who exactly has access to this data. And it's partly because the typical IoT pipeline has data leaving the device, going to a server, and on the server both authorized actors like the device's manufacturer and unauthorized actors like hackers can get access to the data that the user thought that they were only privileged to. However, even authorized users can perform unauthorized behaviors where sensitive data ends up on social media or online forums. So for example, the owner of this camera-equipped Roomba, they did not expect that photos of them on the toilet would end up on the internet, let alone leave their house. So cameras are great sensors, but people are apprehensive about using them due to the privacy leakages. So how do we keep the good stuff of cameras, the useful parts of cameras, while addressing the privacy issues? So the Roomba's photos were sensitive, they were stored on the cloud, they were accessed through authorized channels, so the annotators. Yet ultimately this led to privacy issues. So how can this be addressed? How can we move past the all or nothing behavior that cameras have, where you either get a whole image or nothing at all? How can we robustly remove PII from an image? But most importantly, how can it happen on device so that the raw data is never stored or transferred? If the Roomba is still sending raw pictures online so that sanitization can happen elsewhere, it still can present a privacy issue. So one way is for this IoT device to have a PII filter on device so that the PII is removed before it leaves the device and heads off elsewhere to cloud storage. Ultimately, no matter how secure the cloud is, people are generally uncomfortable with sharing sensitive data or having it stored in the cloud, and they don't want it to be in a place where someone else could access. So to tackle this problem, we present PrivacyLens. PrivacyLens uses a hybrid RGB and thermal approach, where we can use these two cameras together to create a subtraction mask. And the RGB is used with a lightweight YOLO V5 model that allows us to find persons in the RGB image and create a bounding box. And the union of these two regions defines the pixels to be removed in the RGB image. And using these capabilities, we can selectively composite different image representations, and this allows us to have flexibility between the privacy desires of the user and also the information needs of a downstream application. So, for example, here is some real-time video, and this is a stick figure where only a stick figure representation is captured. Here's thermal subtraction, where persons in the image are removed entirely. And here's face swap, where faces are replaced in the image. But again, all of these need to happen on the device, so we can talk hardware. So PrivacyLens consists of three major components. There's an RGB camera, a thermal camera, and a Jetson Nano. And this Jetson Nano has an embedded GPU on board that allows us to do efficient GPU operations. And we use this to accelerate our PII removal tasks so that they can be done in real time. So in our thermal subtraction and facial landmark benchmarks, it significantly outperforms embedded CPUs, which struggle to maintain real-time performance. But more importantly, GPUs can do these tasks very efficiently, and so power consumption is an extremely important parameter in IoT applications, and PrivacyLens is low power enough to be integrated into existing IP cam fixtures. So to evaluate PrivacyLens, we conducted a deployment study where we deployed PrivacyLens in 3 environments. First was an office atrium, the second was a home living room, and the third was a public park square. And in total, we collected over 22,000 image sets. And of those 22,000, 3,261 contained persons in them, and that forms the basis of our evaluation tasks. So to these images, we applied 3 PII removal methods. The first was the PrivacyLens hybrid thermal subtraction approach, as seen in the top right figure. And we applied 2 RGB only methods as baselines for comparison, as seen in the bottom 2 figures. The first is YOLO Feed 5 in the bottom left, which presents a lightweight approach that can run on the embedded device. And the second is Detectron 2, which is a state-of-the-art approach that would require desktop GPUs. And in these example images on the right, we can see that PrivacyLens robustly removed the persons in the image, while YOLO removed most of the person in the bottom right, but failed to remove the person sitting on the sofa. And Detectron 2 successfully identified both persons, but similar to YOLO, at least skin color in the bottom right, as the bounding box was not drawn sufficiently enough to remove all PII. So to evaluate these PII removal methods, annotators evaluate the images for whether they contain 5 forms of PII, specifically face and skin and hair color, gender and body shape. And we base these PII identifiers on the California privacy laws definitions, but given the fluid nature of privacy, there can be more work done in this area to kind of define an actionable PII remove metric. And we found that RGB only methods struggled to remove all 5 forms of PII, only completely sanitizing less than 57.6% of images. And this was often due to partial detection, so kind of in the last image you have some exposure. And also leaving which leaves large parts of the person exposed. Or the RGB only method failed to detect the person entirely, which would expose all 5 forms of PII, and we define this as a total failure. So YOLO in particular had a total failure in 14.6% of images, and Detectron 2, which fared significantly better, had a total failure in 3.1% of images. Conversely, PrivacyLens' hybrid approach, where we use the thermal image-defined people, performed much more robustly, completely sanitizing 99.1% of images. There were no total failures, no facial PII leakage, and the skin and hair color PII leakages were primarily due to insufficient thermal masking. So in this figure on the right, these are 3 example images where our annotators flagged as having PII leakage. So, and we've highlighted them in pink. So in the left with some skin color, in the right with some skin color, in the far right, in the middle with some skin color, and the far right with some skin color. So while we've shown that PrivacyLens can remove PII well, we also wanted to demonstrate that PII sanitized images are still useful and it can support imported camera tasks. Thus we ran a study to evaluate the performance of these PII sanitized applications. So for exercise tracking, we used the stick figure to identify key points. So in the figure on the right, you can see the key points are matching the squat, and we can use these key points to count the number of repetitions. For the hand-to-object detection, we paired stick figure thermal subtraction and a YOLO object detector, and this allows us to determine when a person is interacting with an object in the environment, so we can understand what is happening in the environment without capturing the pixels of that person. And for fall detection, since fall detection models are very computationally expensive and cannot be done on device, we can generate key points on device and send only those key points to an off-the-shelf model, and that off-the-shelf model we did not have to modify. And this allows us to run privacy-preserved fall detection that can leverage existing machine learning approaches, and we can safely distribute the computationally expensive parts to the cloud. So these are just 3 applications. There are more applications that could benefit from these representations. For example, in a public event or in a line at a coffee shop, you might want to count the number of people without capturing or revealing their identities. These 3 were just the ones that we presented and evaluated in the paper. So I wanted to quickly mention that there's a lot more in the paper, and I couldn't cover everything in the talk. So some things were a threat model analysis and how PrivacyLens addresses them, an analysis of more aggressive RGB-only PII removal methods, how removing PII impacts the performance of downstream applications, how participants viewed the additional PrivacyLens modes and their acceptances in the home, and finally, our limitations and some avenues for future work. So, in conclusion, PrivacyLens made the following contributions. The first is the PrivacyLens system, which performs robust real-time and on-device PII removal. The second is an extensive evaluation across multiple environments, showing significantly improved PII removal rates over RGB-only methods. And finally, 3 applications which demonstrate PrivacyLens' utility and their compatibility with downstream computer vision and machine learning approaches. So I want to wrap up with thanking my collaborators, Tom, Will, Professor Shin, and Professor Sample. And I also wanted to quickly mention that I'll be on the job market this fall. And so I'm looking for academic and industry research positions. So if you found this work interesting or want to chat about privacy-preserved sensing or privacy-preserved hardware, please reach out or come talk to me after the session. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for the talk. So I worked on gate recognition before, and just from the motion alone, you can identify people. So when I see your stick figures, I imagine you probably can still identify the persons which are in the video. Have you considered that for PrivacyLens?
Yeah, so we thought about this with PrivacyLens a lot because gate is one of those biometric identifiers that the CPRA lists out, but gate is very hard for an annotator to be able to point out through a set of images. And so one of the things that we thought about is what if we could lower the frame rate, right? If you lower the frame rate of the gate, you might be able to reduce the presence. The other thing is you can always roll back to thermal subtraction, which does not capture any of the key points. So it really kind of comes down to what the user is sensitive towards and what the application really needs. So you kind of can't do fault detection without kind of capturing the key points, so you kind of have to accept that gate is going to be a part of it if you want to do that specific task.
Yeah, just a quick note on the frame reduction, that's probably not going to help. We tested that in a paper in PATS last year, and that didn't work at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very quickly, very nice presentation, thank you. Did you tested on your static cameras, as I saw, did you test any on cameras with motion, also not motion in the camera, but in the view, but motion of cameras?
So we primarily work with static cameras, but we don't see a necessary reason that a motion camera would have an issue, except for if you have synchronization issues between the thermal camera and the RGB camera. But that's more of an engineering effort and less of a research effort. But I don't really see as big of an issue with as long as the thermal and the RGB images are synced.
I think that's all we have time for. Before we wrap up, the organizers would like me to remind you that there are going to be closing remarks in the main lecture room in 15 minutes, followed by an awards reception over in the Humanities Foyer. So with that, let's thank Yasha and all of us for being here.